IoT and SAP enter into a bar. This is how the joke started when Chris Carter and I discussed how IoT is relevant in the SAP world. Chris is a guru when it comes to SAP. And if you don't know SAP, well, he will tell you what it is. In a nutshell, that's number one ERP CRM tool out there. If you don't know it, well, you certainly have been living under a rock. So what we're going to tell you, Chris and I, is how IoT can feed your ERP, CRM, and other tools under SAP in a very productive way. That's today on the IoT Show. And if you have not done so yet, please subscribe to the channel. That really helps. Give us a like and leave a comment. We're curious to know what you think. Hi everyone, this is the IoT Show. I'm Olivier, your host. Today, I will surprise you. We will talk SAP with Chris Carter here. Hey Chris, how are you?
I'm well, and yes, we are going to surprise some people.
Yeah, we are, right? Especially as the audience of the IoT Show is IoT practitioners, people looking into the IoT lens at things. And here we're going to ask them to open their mind up and consider SAP, because some companies, many companies, are already using SAP, but now we want to see what the overlap could be between SAP and IoT. Before we get into that, Chris, maybe not everyone knows you. You are well known. You have a lot of content out there. You have public speaking, but tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, thank you. I'm Chris Carter. I'm a 17-time author and a 4-time best-selling author of technology based around SAP, AI, cloud computing, and security. And I've been in the SAP and the technology space since 1989 when I got my first position in technology in 1989 at the Georgia Institute of Technology. So I'm excited to be here, and I can't help but to hope that somebody gets a little bit of knowledge and I pick up some as well.
That's awesome. Well, Chris, you reached out, and that really triggered my curiosity when you said, hey, how about we talk about SAP to your audience? And I was like, wait a second, not something that myself would, instinctively say, oh, yeah, it's a good fit. So we joked about, hey, what if SAP and IoT enter the bar? Would that be hand in hand? Would they come out together? So a little bit of joking in here, but let me ask you, do you see IoT data being used in SAP, which is an ERP tool, right? Which is more of an enterprise resource planning tool and set of functionalities. So how is IoT fitting in that scenario, and how long has it been that people are doing that?
Yes, it's been doing that for years. SAP and the IoT, the Internet of Things, is you've got to put data into an SAP environment. It can't just work on its own. So anytime you're putting any type of data into it and you're utilizing it to make sure that your company and what they're doing, what they're building, the activities that they're doing around it, how those are being launched, what they're being performed with, all of that is data. And SAP loves data. So when you start bringing all of those IoT devices into your SAP data system, your HANA database, and you can leverage that to be able to give you better technology-driven results, that's where SAP is, that's where it thrives. And that's why they work so hand in hand together. We've been using IoT and those data schemas for years now. I remember back in probably the 1990s, maybe early 2000s, all of a sudden IoT kicked up and it just went crazy. Well, we need data. We needed to be able to understand the data. We needed to do things with the data for all the different companies that we work with. And it just blew up. And so there's SAP IoT training classes and activities all throughout our SAP ecosystem.
Okay, well, that's good to know. So extending your knowledge and understanding and skill set that you already have on IoT to SAP is definitely a good path for our audience here. What kind of scenarios can you describe that would very much like extract the best of IoT data into an ERP or CRM system like SAP?
Well, sure. So some of the activities, if you're out into different warehouses or if you're out in different schemas and you're pulling data, if you're grabbing data from any type of device that's out there in an ecosystem, and you need to be able to bring that in. I'll do an example of a customer that we have over in Georgia. Their IoT data is literally throughout their entire organization, between their warehouses, their real-time, just-in-time manufacturing processes, and all the tools and technologies that they have to use for those activities are part of their IoTs and their devices that they use. So those devices bring in the data. They don't house the data. They actually shoot that immediately back to the SAP ecosystem and their landscape. And that SAP landscape takes all that IoT data, pulls it into their repository, into the specific repository that they're gathering that information in. And then SAP reads it based upon the reports or the technology that they've built into the system based on that activities. So it really gives them a bigger and a more elusive, not elusive, and the data that would have been elusive is now grabbed and being able to be used by them. And that's huge for them because they're a federally regulated organization. So all that IoT data has to be monitored and evaluated continuously. And so our tools and SAP allows it to do that. And that's the thing.
Interesting.
If you're in a
Interesting.
regulated organization, you have to take care of that stuff.
Yeah, definitely. And Chris, as we were talking, I was thinking a lot of the scenarios you're describing could work with historian data, right? Data has been picked up on industrial assets and so on, and logged in on as, diagnostics data, whatever, and then picked up on a hard drive, brought into the cloud or an SAP application, and it would be historical data, right? Already very useful. But now with IoT, you can have real-time data. How much of the real-time data you see today being used versus historical data, and how do they complement each other in an SAP world?
So that's a great question. And this is why we're going to walk out of the bar hand in hand as buddies, singing some type of Irish dance song after we had some good whiskey and scotch. The great thing about SAP is it is a real-time application. So companies need to know what's happening in real time, and they're getting fed their dashboards and the data. All that IoT data in a real-time scenario, when you start with the history and you move it into real time, that's when the magic happens. And that's why it's a beautiful thing. And that's why we're going to drink together, is because it gives you that ability to continue across your entire ecosystem, no matter what part of your business you're in and what group you're in. You're getting the instantaneous gratification that you need as part of an ERP solution. And that data coming from your IoT devices is critical to come in, give you the right details at the right time to be able to be successful. All SAP is a real-time data analysis tool. And all that data coming in from those IoT devices is real-time data. And we've got a tool, Overwatch, where we put all that information on a dashboard, and you can literally watch what's going on, watch the production, watch the activities going, watch how distribution, you can watch everything from a technology standpoint. And that to me geeks me out. I'm a technologist. I love that kind of stuff. So between AI, IoT, SAP, I love that stuff because it's right now. Oh, now it's right now. Oh, nope, now it's right now. And it continues to be right now. And that's the important thing.
Yeah, definitely. So we're saying it's about data being fed into SAP, real-time data or historical data. But IoT data has this complexity layer on top, which is like there's no heterogeneous IoT system. Like data is different formats, different protocols, and so on. Is there any specific tools or features in SAP that will help you normalize the IoT data or deal with contextualization of this kind of things? Or is it something you have to consider ahead of feeding SAP with your IoT data, real time or historical?
Well, you do have to think about it. And I tell organizations, no matter what you're putting into your system, how you're going to do this, you've got to think about what you're going to need. What do you want the end product to be as well? How are you going to gather that information? What are you going to do with that information? So since it's different variations of data, you need to understand, is it going straight into my HANA database? Is there going to be some kind of with DimPro? It's a tool that we use in SAP. Is it going to be in the HANA database? Is it going to be in a third-party database? How are we going to use that data and capture that data first? Then what do we need to do to make sure that we can get that data into the repositories that we have in SAP, basically inside of a HANA database? And then to be able to evaluate that data in real time so it sits on our dashboard and we're able to make business decisions based upon that as a component of the data that we're getting. So you really do, I always say, no matter what, you need to understand what is your data, what type of texture, is it coming in as text, is it coming in as scans, what is that data coming in as? Where are you going to put that data? How are you going to leverage that data for success? And then how are you going to move that data into, at the end, what type of repository, what kind of blob storage, where you can, so you can leverage that data in the past for the future and the future from the past.
Awesome.
Oh, there's so much.
Yeah, well, and this is something that, and what you describe is interesting because it's not everything is going to be automatic and like, hey, I'm going to plug my SCADA system through a cloud solution and boom into SAP. You still will have to deal with that data formats and so on to make sure that data makes sense. So there's something to say about digital twins and UNS. And I just published an article on LinkedIn this morning. So my brain is really wired onto this data processing pipeline for IoT data. And so it's something that's very top of mind. But so you described some high level scenarios. Can you give us a couple of concrete examples of how switching from historical data, into their SAP system, from their assets, equipment, and personal, whatever, some scenarios that really reshaped, changed how these companies are doing business, or eventually develop new business models, or change in terms of efficiency. A concrete couple examples. You gave us one already, but can you tell us more about the business models, the scenarios, and the real change since they started introducing this real-time IoT data into SAP?
So I've got a number of SAP companies that I work with around the globe. Just so happens that that's what I do in my day.
There are many out there using SAP already, right?
83,000, just a few. When 87.3% of all financial transactions on the globe, on the planet, run through an SAP system, you got to be doing some things in some real-time scenarios.
Yeah.
Because every financial institution, from LSEG, London Stock Exchange Group, Lloyd's of London, New York Stock Exchange, Bank of America, Chase, American Express, Visa, they're all using SAP. And the reason they're doing that is because that real-time scenario. So when the companies were back in the R2 days, which was the mainframe days, they weren't necessarily doing real-time, or they were all batching the data. So they would get something that was maybe an hour old or 2 hours old. Well, think about that. If you're making a stock prediction, do you want 2 year or 2 hour old data, or would you rather have data that's right now?
Yep. Easy answer.
So financial institutions that we work with, we're working with them on a real-time scenario. All of the data that they come in gets funneled into. So again, I'll go back to, I would rather a manufacturing organization that we work with, they were on the older R3 environment. We moved them to the ECC, now to the S4. They were batch jobbing, and that batch jobbing is the data gets collected in a repository and it doesn't get used. Mm-hmm. They were doing that once a week. So imagine that you're wasting a week's worth. You don't know what's going on. Well, all of a sudden, what if one client decides to? Well, you get a Walmart, and Walmart wants real-time data. They want to know where all their all their orders are at any time, on any truck, at any point, and from any distributor that manufactures a product from, which I think is pretty cool. So back in the day, we used to do what was called batch jobs. And that could be anywhere from an hour to a day to a week most of it was 24 hours. You would have a 24-hour day. Well,
so the output of analyzing the data was changes to processes to make sure that they were better, but it was not real time. It was like, hours, days, weeks of delay, analyzing data and say, hey, the process could be optimized here and there, right? So there was already this kind of loop that would enhance your processes and give you more productivity, right?
Correct. And it would give you that. because all of the information that you were getting from any machine, any data, any even financial records would be on either an hour delay, a day delay, a week delay, whatever that case was. So go back to the discussion when we were talking about scanners. I've got a company, I've got multiples that use a specific scanner organization. It's named after something that looks like a horse with black and white stripes. We all know. So when that data would come in, back in the day, that was getting batched. So you were getting historical data of a day late. Well, now that's all in real time. But to go back even further, before they really started getting into the IoT activities and merging it with SAP, we used to have systems in place where people would just look at historical data and go, well, that's how we always used to do it. And this time of the year and this time of the month, we would get these activities and we get this activity. Okay, well, if you don't know why, all of a sudden you start bringing the IoT data in and it's feeding your system. And now all of a sudden you're starting to see, oh, why is that doing that? It's doing that because we're at XYZ, or we're doing this because of these orders. And you can now match those up together.
Mhm.
Oh my gosh, it was so much fun. I pulled out all my hair.
A lot of fun then. A lot of fun to hear,
It
Chris.
was, back in the day, that was great stuff. 24-hour days.
Awesome, Chris. Well, Chris, that was very insightful. Can you tell us where the IoT practitioners were listening to this podcast, watching it, can learn more about SAP and where their domain of expertise can apply to the SAP world?
Yeah. First thing you should do, just Google SAP IoT and see all the information that comes up from SAP themselves. There is
Okay.
a lot of good data. You can't get it unless you've got an S number, we call it, which is an SAP number. You can't really get into the SAP Training Center or Portal Center, those activities. So sorry, all of a sudden my daughter just texted me out of
No
the blue.
worries.
I
No
apologize.
worries. You're good, man.
I got two daughters. I'm a two-time girl dad. I'm pretty lucky. And especially when they text me at 12:20 in the afternoon. I cry. No, okay. You probably want to use a credit card.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So go to the Google and Google SAP.com and then IoT. You'll get a lot of great information out there.
Okay.
I do stuff that are out there. I've got stuff on my LinkedIn. I've got stuff in my different feeds that I've got going on. I don't post a lot about it because typically that's a technical side and most people aren't as interested from a technical perspective on everything like that. But that SAP.com and in IoT, there is a ton of information. As a matter of fact,
Okay.
when you and I talked a week and a half ago, I went out and I made sure there was literally pages of Google pages. Some good reading, some long reading. There's an article that's out there by E&Y and then another one by PwC. Some good articles in regards to the activities. And then if you really like your IoT and you want to get into the SAP space, now mind you, we're going through the largest upgrade cycle in history. So they need intelligent people who know IoT and can take on projects. Go out there and take a look because companies are hiring across the board. It is an ecosystem that is growing by leaps and bounds right now. And they need strong IoT based and focused people to help out. So I'm not trying to take anybody away from their job, but if you're looking for a good career, SAP is in it right
Yeah.
now.
No, I appreciate your highlighting that because, we've been talking about IoT being dead or whatever, and actually IoT is feeding all these other domains that you wouldn't even imagine. Well, some are obvious, right? AI needs data from the real world, and so you feed AI with IoT data. Now, SAP, you would not have thought instinctively that real-time IoT data would actually help SAP systems, but like it does in a big way. So thanks for highlighting that, Chris. So your content, definitely, you mentioned some of that, but you're modest. There's a lot that you publish out there, lots of speaking, lots of articles. So definitely recommend people go check you out on LinkedIn and your other platforms. Everyone, thanks for tuning in. Chris, hope to see you again on the show sometime soon.
I look forward to it. And I do love to help people. I'm not here to sell you. I just want to help. And my philosophy has always been no matter if I'm crawling up or down a ladder, I'm always trying to bring somebody along with me to help them out. So if you got any questions, text me, link me. I'd love to be able to help any way I can.
Awesome. Well, have a good one. Everyone, thanks for tuning in.
Thank you, sir.